ICQ Podcast episode 383, International Lighthouse and Lightship Weekend 2022. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, the 383rd episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported by our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin MNRB is joined by Caryn, KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf, Ed DD5 Lima Papa, and Chris Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6PRY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is the International Lighthouse and Lightships Weekend for this year. Now, as always, it's our very kind donors that keep your ICQ podcast running advert-free and working away on the internet here. And as always, we'd like to thank our monthly and subscription donors that give us a sustaining base, as I say, when we don't have any one-off donors. Now, I would ask you to consider the value you get from our show and decide if you'd like to help us out for our running costs. We've had 3 vendors tell us this last fortnight of a rise in their costs going forward. So anything that anyone can send our way will go towards offsetting those costs. So you can do that very, very simply. You go to icqpodcast.com/donate. And the best way I can pitch to you is think about how much value you got from the show compared to a cup of coffee, a theatre ticket, a newspaper, etc. And turn that into a monetary value and send it our way either as a one-off donation or as a subscription donation. And we'd really appreciate your very kind help. Now let's go on with the show, and we're going to join Martin, Caryn, Edmund, Ed and Chris to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including SOTA event prevents a major forest fire and summer camp contact with the Amateur Radio International Space Station. So as always, we hope you enjoy.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 383 of the ICQ Podcast, and tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, the team are going to discuss some very interesting topics, as always, but tonight I'm joined by Caryn, KD2GUT. Hi, Caryn.
How are you, Martin?
I'm ducking and diving, Caryn, honest. But, yeah, you sound in fine form, Caryn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also have Edmund with me, M0MNG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Hello, mate. And also, in Germany, I have Ed with us, DD5LP. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, hi, Martin. Hi, everyone.
Good to have you, mate. And tonight, Chris Howard from the other group has joined us because Dan Romacek is away doing work for the company he works for, and he did tell me he couldn't make this one. So, Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hi, guys. Nice to be here on this other episode. Nice to see the other group. Nice to chat with the other group.
Yeah. So, I think we're going to have some fun tonight. We've had a little chat about the stuff before we started, so it's looking good. And Aris contact with summer camp students at an observatory and a science centre in New York, Caryn. You said this is upstate, and I am aware that there is a state of New York and not just the big city. So do you want to go first on this one, Caryn?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for being aware of that. People think when you say New York that all of New York is tall buildings and bumper-to-bumper traffic, which is not the case. I have not been to this part of New York, but there is a vast part of New York, north of New York City, and looks like these folks are taking advantage of the beautiful clear sky and the absence of noise and light pollution to have their observatory there. What a great location for an ARIS contact. We were noting earlier about this that ARIS does these fairly regularly. I hate to say routinely, because anytime you talk with the space station, I think it's still remarkable because it can be done. But for these students, it's likely the very first time, and they're seeing not just what the experience of being an astronaut is like. They're seeing it through the power of radio. What a great gateway to learn these kinds of things. So I think something like this, while you might say, "Oh, it's another ARIS contact," well, no, it's not. It's a way to open these students' eyes. They're already predisposed to loving science and loving space and loving communication. So, this could lead to someone wanting to be an astronaut, or someone wanting to get into something in the field of being at an observatory or related STEM area. So, looking forward to seeing how this goes. The questions, we always see the questions, don't we? Those are interesting.
They certainly are. And let's face it, this is a life-changing program if you get on it and you're able to do this sort of thing. I mean, okay, us radio amateurs, we're going to be lucky if we get a contact with the International Space Station when it goes over, unless it's pre-booked. So, how many people worldwide will actually, in the big scheme of things, actually do this and get a contact with the space station? This is a game changer for people. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, yes, indeed, because it can be hard enough to get a contact through the crossband repeater on there. Sometimes I've still failed to do that, but it's always exciting hearing the International Space Station, and if a pass happens to coincide with it being dark, so you can actually see the little white ball of light in the sky going past, that's a magical combination, and it's quite a good way to enthuse young people as well. So even if you don't have an opportunity to talk to the astronauts or be part of a contact with a school, it's always worth listening on 145.800. If you stick your receiver on wide deviation, then you probably won't need to retune very much, apart from maybe at the very beginning and the very end of the pass. And if the highest point of the pass is not too high in the sky, you might be able to hear most of it through a collinear or a vertical antenna. So this is something that I've always been excited at doing, as I think Martin. Back to you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that would be an achievement for anybody to get a contact with the ISS. Chris, when you were out in Freakshaven earlier with Ed, you had a chat with the guys at Harris, didn't you?
I did. So, so Oliver Amen, GG6BCE, who is the chairman for Harris in Europe, I interviewed for the podcast. It was episode 380. For those that didn't catch it, go back and have a listen. There's lots of very interesting information about how it all works and how it's set up and how you can apply if you want to, if you're involved with the education and you want to apply to contact the space station. But it was very interesting, and those guys are now pretty expert. He explained about the telebridge. Sometimes use a telebridge to contact the space station, but lots of good stuff there. So if you are interested, go back and have a listen. And if you are in education, it's well worth applying, because you never know, you might just get your school picked to talk to the astronauts. And actually, as you were saying earlier, I think that will be a fantastic thing. If you imagine as a child, that's something you'd remember forever, having spoken to people in space. So I think also it's very good in terms of promoting a hobby, because often it's a big event for a school or a college, or etc. For this to happen. You often get the press turn up, and it really puts our hobby into a great light. So I think it's a big win-win for everyone involved, really.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Chris. A win-win, totally. Ed, you were out in Friedrichshafen with Chris. Are you sure you probably got to chat with the guy as well? But what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to this is the fact that a lot of people hearing this will probably think, oh, that's great if a school can apply and they can get this contact with an astronaut as they go over. Fantastic. But if you apply to ARIS for any of these contacts, you need to put together a proposal. And in that proposal, there's going to be several months of teaching of the children involved before the event. So this is very much a technology training course, if you like, of several months. And the best part, of course, is the contact. But prior to that, the students have to actually learn about space technologies, about electronics, about radio, about all kinds of different things. So even without a successful contact, you've already widened the horizon and knowledge of the children that are going to take part. So it's not just the one day or one night. It is the run up to it and the preparation for it and everything else that makes it something special. The one thing that we haven't heard anything about lately, which I find a little disappointing, is that one time we had ham TV. That was fast scan digital TV from the space station, and for some reason that equipment failed. It'd be interesting to know if they ever intend to get that back again, because it would just add that little bit more pizzazz to the contact. If you could actually see the astronaut the children are talking to, or they can see him or her. And yeah, we haven't heard anything from ARIS about that. That's something we should have asked them in Friedrichshafen, but it got forgotten. But yeah, let's hope we get the ham TV to come back as well as the audio in the future. In the meantime, good luck with the every school that might get a slot for a contact. And let's remember also this is international. There's schools in India, in Australia, in the UK, in the US. It's not just a US or Northern Hemisphere thing. It is worldwide. So well done on the ARIS team, and long may they continue. And let's see what comes with whatever the new space station is after the ISS.
Yeah, certainly. And so I think all in all, we all think this is a great idea, great life-changing for the guys that were on this course. And it will have happened by the time you get this podcast on Sunday morning, unfortunately, but we thought it was worth running because it is such a good story. Right, and next news story, a Radio Relic. Now, I really got excited about this because this was done back in 1937. A gentleman, radio amateur, he produced a radio telescope. He built it himself in his backyard. There's some phenomenal pictures of it on the website, but a lot of work, and I think he did really well. I'm going to let you go first on this one, Ed. What do you think?
I think it's very good. This actually comes from the Astronomy magazine, and it's the picture of the month, and it shows the radio telescope that was built in 1937 by radio amateur Grote Reber, W9GFZ, and it's in the Chicago area. It's now a museum piece, of course, but this is a case of somebody that was interested in what was extremely new technology at the time, and he built this partially because he wanted to work with Karl Jansky, who was the pioneer in this area, but couldn't get a job with him. So he built it himself and then used it to confirm Jansky's findings, which in science you need to do. One person finding something is good, but you need a second one to prove it, to verify it. And it's now at the National Radio Astronomy in Greenbank, West Virginia. And yeah, this story comes from a photograph that was taken of the radio telescope with the night sky in the background. So very impressive. The link's in the show notes. And it just shows you radio amateurs have always been on the forefront of technology. And, well done to this guy. And it's still going on today. So, there's a lot of radio amateurs in the forefront of technology, and long may that continue.
Yeah, certainly agree with that. And as I say, if you understand technology and you're a technical mind, often you can turn your hand to all sorts of things that maybe we shouldn't be able to do, but we can, because we don't see it as a problem. So there you go. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I actually wasn't sure why this suddenly appeared, but I can see now what he was in a magazine. But no, I mean, if you look at the picture, it looks like something that could have been built. A 9.6 meter dish is not a small piece of kit. The photograph looks like there's nothing next to it to scale, but it looks like it's a pretty huge piece of equipment. I'm sure it would take a lot to move it around and point it and track things, etc. So it is a pretty impressive thing. And today, this was done 90 or so, or 85 or so years ago. That's it's very impressive, very impressive. I was also quite impressed by the guy that submitted the photograph, just because that's an interesting place. It's a guy called Ken Wilson from Mechanicsville, Virginia. I thought, oh wow, a place called Mechanicsville. That sounds a very interesting name for a place. That's that relevant to the story. But no, I mean, it looks like the person that did this must have been, say, for the time, very pioneering stuff, really.
Yeah, certainly is. Caryn, what's your thoughts?
Well, I must tell you, this is the ultimate homebrew project. Hams are known to build things, and this fellow really built something. I do find myself wondering, wonder what Yansky thought afterward when he realized he had an opportunity to hire him and didn't. But it just shows there is a spirit among amateur radio operators that there's more than one way to get the job done. And really, what I see in this image and in this whole concept is it's an affirmation of homebrew, which is something that is even now not a dead art, certainly, but back then, as I say, as projects go, you cannot order a kit and build this. This was truly homebrew at its finest. So I say bravo.
Yeah, bravo's a good word in this instance. Edmund, thoughts on this one?
Well, quite apart from the technology being used with it, to build a 9.6 meter dish and, well, to set it up and get it working, particularly if it's one person on their own, that is just mind-blowing. At ground level, I have stood next to a 1.8 meter offset dish for KU band satellite reception, and that seemed enormous enough, but compared to 9.6 meters, that's relatively small. So that's one heck of an achievement. And if I was trying to build a 9.6 meter diameter anything in 2022, I don't even know where I would start. So I'm suitably impressed, shall we say, Martin?
Yeah, I thought you would be, because I know you like satellite dishes and that sort of thing. And yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, like you say, where would you get the materials today? Yeah, there are obviously places, but nowadays people just want to do it on the internet. So bit of a shame, really. Moving to our next news story, I'm going to give this one to Ed again first, because it's not technically correct. It says 2 new bands for Canada amateurs. We're talking about 472 to 479 kilohertz, which is the 630 meter band, and they've also been given the 60 meter band, which we believe is also good news. So, Ed, do you want to go first?
Yeah, this story came out probably 10 days ago, and we covered it on AR Newsline. And one thing that struck me immediately was, hang on, I thought Canada already had 600 meters, 630 meters. And checking up through Wikipedia and other sources, the Canada amateurs got the use of the 630 meter band in April 2014. So I suspect what this story is, it's been triggered by some updates to the regulations from the regulator. I suspect in the case of the 630 meter band, it's simply been added into the standard documentation as opposed to it being a special allocation, so to speak. But so 630 meters, as far as I can see, has had Canadian amateurs on it for some time. And Canada also has certain channels on the 60 meter band, the 5 megahertz band. And what's happened here is rather nice, and would be nice if some other countries would do the same. The WRC 15 agreed by ITU 60 meter band from 5351.5 to 5366.5 kilohertz has been given to the Canadian amateurs in addition to the channels that they already have. So it's actually gone on top of one of their channels. So they've still got 4 standard spot frequencies, and now they have what is being referred to as the international 60 meter band, and they've kept the 100 watts. And whereas the WRC specification is actually for 15 or 25 watts in different parts of the world, of course, every regulator can decide for themselves what they're going to allow the amateurs to use, how much power, what frequencies, etc. So the Canadians have come out well ahead on this, something that didn't happen to the Dutch a while ago when they tried to do the same thing and add the band. Their regulator just simply turned around and said, okay, you get the standard band and you lose all your channels, and it's at the standard 15 watts. So, you know, it's risky, but it would be nice if this same effect that's happened in Canada could happen in the US and the UK, because at present, whereas most of the countries that have 60 meters have the standard frequencies, there's only spot frequencies within there that overlap with the channels in the US and the UK. So we'll see what happens after this. If in Canada it all runs well, maybe the FCC will look on it positively and say, okay, we'll do the same. That would be nice. And also whether the Ofcom in the UK might do the same as well. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. This is great news for Canada. As we were talking prior to hitting the record button, you know, there are certain frequencies around the world that some countries will never, ever get that others have. Our UK frequencies for HF don't fully mesh with, for argument's sake, the States. But this is a move in the right direction, I think. So that's where I'm going on that one. Caryn, what's your thoughts on this one?
Okay, Martin, there isn't much I have to add on this particular one. I know here in the States we have the band channelized, so I haven't really made any use of it. Here at home I don't have the antenna for it just yet. But no, there's not much to add. I think it pretty much, well, it's a good thing, but beyond that, I can't say what would happen here in the States if we were to get expanded use. But there's always hope.
There certainly is. And the first time I went on 60 meters, I was with Chris, I think. It was one bank holiday. I only worked 4 stations in the morning, but it was a bank holiday Monday, and I wasn't expecting many people to be around because I thought they'd be doing with their family. And because the UK's channelized, it was almost like FM because everybody was dead on frequency and it sounded really, really good. So, yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to go to Chris because you were with me that day. I don't know if you remember.
It was, I do remember that day. I think it was it when you got your FT450, Martin? I seem to recall. I can't remember now. I think it was. And yeah, it was. I mean, as per this particular story, I mean, it's always good when new bands become available to amateurs, and it's good news. And maybe, like you say, one day perhaps we'll get this in the UK. I don't think we've already got this. We have 60 meters, but not perhaps the other band. But yeah, I mean, I was there that day, and yes, it was like you say. I remember having a long chat with a chap on the south coast. So yeah, that was no, I do remember that very well. Am I right in saying it was on your 450? I can't remember now.
You were right. It was the 450 I used to own. Some ways I'm regretting in some ways selling it, but never mind. But there you go. Edmund, you got a 450, and I'm sure you've done some 60 metres. What do you think?
I have got a 450, one of the original ones, and until my IC7300 came along, it was my main HF rig for over 10 years, so that can give you some idea of what a good radio it is. As far as 60 metres goes, yes, I go on the band sometimes, and the way I do it is by clipping temporary wire extensions onto the end of my 40 metre dipole. Okay, the 40 metre dipole will work on 60 metres with a tuner, but it works a lot better to actually stick extra lengths of wire on it, and it doesn't make the antenna that much longer overall. So if you've got a 40 metre dipole in your back garden, for example, then chances are, unless the dipole is right up to the perimeters at each end, you ought to be able to clip some extra wire on and maybe fold it back on itself so it looks a bit like the letter Z as viewed from above. As far as the Canadian allocation goes, this is good news, because channel 3, as per the American band plan, which has a dial frequency of 5357, will overlap the Canadian allocation, so hopefully some QSOs will be possible on that frequency. As far as Europe goes, most of Europe has the WRC World Radio Conference 15 allocation, which frequency-wise is the same as the Canadian one. The difference is the power limitation. It's limited to 15 watts, 15 watts. Can't remember if that's ERP or 15 watts at the back of the radio. But anyway, not a huge amount of power either way. Now, allocation in the UK partially overlaps the WRC 15 band. So for SSB, you can use 5354 and 5363 up to 100 watts in the UK to work people in Europe who will also be, should be running a lot less power than that. But because Canada has now got 100 watts, I'm wondering if when the time of year is right, if we're going to start seeing SSB contacts on 60 metres between the UK and Canada on those frequencies. If somebody manages it, it probably won't be me who does it. But if 60 metres in the UK is something that interests you, then there is a group on Facebook called the UK 60 metre 5 megahertz in brackets band group, and that group is looked after by Selim Mike Zero X-Ray Tango Alpha, who I'm sure would be very pleased to add you into the group if you wanted to join it on Facebook. But yeah, 60 metres is a great band. It's open to places at times when propagation on 80 and 40 wouldn't allow contacts into those places, and the only shame is that more people don't use it, although in the UK to transmit on the band you do need to be a full licence holder. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, no problems. I was going to check with you. I believed you had to be a full licence holder to use 60 metres in the UK, which is a bit of a shame really, but I suppose if you've gone for all the effort of getting a full licence, you should have some benefits. Hi. Right, let's move to our next news story. Hams on SOTA event helped prevent a major forest fire. So you're out and about wandering around. You can probably see all sorts of things. I know, Chris, in your feature for the last episode, you mentioned the young lady who broke her ankle when you were coming off a SOTA event. So us amateurs, we're out and about doing things, and we probably see that's why it's worth keeping your radio with you. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, on the occasion we were in, thankfully we had mobile phone coverage, so there was no need to break out the radio. We could call the emergency services using the mobile phone, so it was fine. But I had my radio with me, and had it not have worked, then I'd have been probably calling on a local repeater or something to try to get some help. But it wasn't required. Thankfully, there was good coverage there on the phone service. But no, absolutely, if you got anybody out and about, whether it's SOTA or otherwise, yeah. When you're out and about, things can happen, and we happen to be there, we can always help. And it sounds like on this occasion, we had some people that were out over in South Dakota and spotted a forest fire or potential forest fire, and were able to quickly call the emergency services, I believe, via a repeater. And basically, they were able to get some help, and yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, it certainly is, mate. Certainly is on that one. Ed, I know you're in SOTA world, you're a mountain goat, but this is probably not an exciting SOTA activation as such for you, but what do you think?
Yeah, the SOTA component in there is actually not so relevant. It's just some amateurs that are working out portable or just out walking even, and they use the handy talkies back to a local repeater to get somebody else to call the emergency services to let them know there's a fire, and that's fine. It's not SOTA specific. In this case, it happened to be some people that were on the way back from a SOTA peak, but could just as easily been somebody on a parks activation or somebody just out with the family. The key point is they had the radio with them, they didn't have cell phone coverage, and they were able to make a contact. I'm not sure whether, it's apparently they made it with a simplex frequency, but then it got relayed on a repeater. But in any case, they were able to make communications back, and most importantly, they didn't leave it to somebody else to do. The fire brigade wouldn't care if 5 people called them and told them there's a fire in the forest. If people had just gone, oh, somebody else will tell them about that, then it could have been a very major fire. So good on them for taking the initiative and giving the call, albeit partially by radio, but getting the information out to the people who needed to take care of it.
Certainly, and your point about being a good citizen and owning the responsibility is a good thing. It's something more people ought to do in life. You're dead right. I mean, I've reported accidents on the motorway when I got to the next phone at the side of the road years ago, before we had mass mobile phones. But in fairness, I got through to the operator and they said, no, thank you very much for letting us know. We know about it. There's emergency vehicles on the way. And of course, to get to the phones, you've probably passed the accident. You're down the road now, out the way. So, I've done it as well, Ed. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, it's not quite the same, but I would echo exactly what Ed said there. Don't just assume that somebody else will do it. A few years ago, I was walking along in Littlehampton with a marine handheld, and I picked up a very strong signal on channel 16, which is calling in distress, and a boat just off Littlehampton had lost all power and was drifting, and I think they possibly had other problems as well, and they actually called Mayday. They were a rock-solid signal with me due to their proximity, but they were calling, and Solent Coast Guard weren't responding. I gathered that the radio had failed in such a way that it was only putting out a very small amount of power. So I rang 999, asked for the Coast Guard, long story short, the people on the boat also had a mobile phone, and because they weren't that far offshore really, they were still within mobile coverage, and they themselves had rung 999 and reported it to the Coast Guard. So all was well that ended well. They got towed back in at the end, and my closing comments to the Coast Guard were, well, I'm sorry I've wasted your time by ringing you up and telling you something that you already knew, as it turned out. And his words were, we would, basically what Ed said, we would rather have lots and lots of calls, and you would not believe how many people in our day-to-day experience see something but then just assume that somebody else will report it or deal with it. And he said it in a tone of voice that gave me the impression that he was a man speaking from a lot of first-hand experience. So I absolutely echo what Ed says. Don't just leave it to somebody else and assume wrongly that they will deal with it instead, because let's face it, if you yourself don't report it personally, why is it fair for you then to expect anybody else to make that effort that you yourself aren't prepared to make? Yes, so what was the question? Oh yes, the forest fire. Very topical, given that on the evening of recording we're just about to enter the second official heat wave in about 2 or 3 weeks. There have been fields catching fire not too far away from where I live, and of course if you're in a forest that's catching fire, or a field in open countryside that's starting to smoulder, then those kind of places are probably the ones where you are less likely to have reliable mobile phone coverage. So yeah, don't go anywhere without a 2 metre 70 centimetre radio. Have your local repeaters and your local simplex frequencies programmed in, and make sure that you know how to use it as well, because if you spend almost all your life on HF, it's not going to do you any good if the first time you turn your handy talkie on and scratch your head and think, oh, how do I actually use this? What buttons do I need to press? Is at the moment that you need to grab it and use it in an emergency. So make sure you know exactly what you're doing before the time comes. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, good advice, Edmund, good advice. Caryn, have we left you anything to say on this one? You know, we've been fairly vocal.
Oh, you guys have a lot to say. I have maybe just a few words I'd like to add, which is, you know, when we get our license, at least I can speak for here in the States, and I'm sure it's true everywhere. When we get our license, there is an assumption that we are going to be responsible people, that we are going to care for the community. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we run out and join, here in the States, Aries or races. It doesn't necessarily mean that, although many people do. But what it means is that we are stewards of one another's safety, as well we should be, because the privilege we get for using these airwaves, which belong to the public, privilege we get, we pay for in responsibility, not money, but in commitment and responsibility. And so I think in the case of this story, no, it is not SOTA specific. It could be radio operator specific, but here is somebody really living out the spirit behind the license, which is you are responsible for looking out for people and helping ensure safety. That's a really cool thing that every ham radio operator can and should be willing to do this. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, you summed it up really well, Caryn. Our license is a privilege, and not only is it useful to learn the technology, but we can sometimes put something back into society with it. So that's a good one. Right, moving to our next news story, and I'm going to get Caryn to go first on this one, is Angola DXpedition promises people to the moon. Do you want to go first on this one? Caryn? Because I know you've spoken to the gentleman.
Yeah, we emailed back and forth with Bernie. Bernie will be going to Angola from South Africa, which is not exactly around the corner from where he lives. And he will be making the trip by land. He will be making a very long trip, but he is specifically choosing to do this by land vehicle because he wants to bring antennas that will increase the likelihood of more people being able to make contact on 2 meters with him. Bernie is doing 2 meter EME. He's going to be bouncing signals off the moon in the hopes of getting, between 200 and 300 contacts over the course of just a couple of days. He's an experienced EME operator. He knows what to do, knows how to set everything up. He's going to great extremes. What he's really excited about, and I think this was why it was newsworthy for us at Newsline to include this, is this kind of contact, EME on 2 meters, has not been done from Angola. And Bernie is hoping people will have an opportunity to log it. And, he really wants people to have that experience. So I think it's as much a thrill for him as everyone else. He even refers people to his website where he instructs people, if you've never done this before and you'd like to try, and he walks people through step by step, so that imagine a first timer doing EME, and what do? They manage to get 2 meter contact with Bernie as newbies in this mode. So that's really what it's all about, is making it exciting, and it sounds like he's done just that. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, it certainly does sound so. It's going to be exciting on this one. Edmund, I doubt if you've done EME, but I'm sure you're interested in the technology. And if the gentleman is doing voice contacts, normally that involves lots of antennas and all sorts of other big arrays of antennas. But what do you think?
I have done it, but not with my own equipment. There was a short-lived radio rally near Eastbourne that ran for a couple of years in the mid-2010s, and one year a local chap brought a portable Earth station for 2 meters down that consisted of 4 very long Yagis that were bayed and stacked, and the whole thing was mounted on a couple of heavily modified motors from wheelchairs. And this guy had homebrewed this contraption, and it tracked the moon as it went across, and I was one of the lucky people who was allowed to speak into the microphone and work somebody who on a planetary scale was just down the road, actually. So didn't get DX out of it. But the point was, this contraption is the only way I can describe it. It was a magnificent piece of homebrew engineering. It required 2 people, if not more, to get it out of the car, set it up and align it. And that took long enough. If the only person doing all of that was the guy who owned it, it would have probably taken him hours to set it up and calibrate it. So Bernie here is going to be doing something similar after driving. Now I'm going to do a quick calculation in my head here from kilometres to miles, but I think it's equates to something like 400 and something miles per day over 4 days, with the last 130-ish of that over dirt tracks, and then the same in reverse, obviously, to come home again. Blimey, he is made of much sterner stuff than I am. I tip my hat to him, and I wish him absolutely every success If he pulls this off, it's going to be an absolute blinder for those reasons alone, not least the fact he'll be operating in a foreign country, and we don't know exactly what facilities may or may not be available to him in the exact location where he sets everything up. So he's a brave boy, Martin, and I'm not. Back to you.
Right, well, I reckon you're a bit of a dark horse because you hadn't told me you'd done Earth, Moon, Earth. You kept that one quiet. But
yeah, I only did it once, and it was somebody else's equipment, though. I've also appeared in Vision on Fast Scan TV at 24 centimetres, but again, that was using other people's equipment. So from my very modest station at home, the highest in frequency I've ever gone is 70 centimetres, and all of that has been terrestrial. I haven't even managed a QSO through a FM EasySat low Earth orbit satellite yet, and given that I've owned an Elk antenna for 3, 4, 5 years now, it's utterly shameful, to put it mildly. So you can take the mickey out of me if you want, Martin. I don't mind.
no, I wasn't taking the mickey. I just thought it was interesting you'd done it. So that's good. That's good. Right. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Not a lot to add, except to point out to the listeners that Bernie's going to be there from the 12th to the 16th of this month. And as we publish on the 14th, that means you've only got a couple of days to find him and work him. So if you hear this and you're interested, check the DX clusters, check Bernie's website, and see if you can get him in his last 2 days before he packs up to go home.
Yeah, good advice, Ed. Good advice on that one. And as I say, it was a bit tight, the timing on this, but at least it will have a couple of days after the podcast gets released. Chris, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, EME is not it's not a simple thing to do. It needs quite a lot of equipment. I imagine like that, amplifiers and very large aerials, etc. So I can see why he's travelling by road, but even so, it's still doing it portable, so to speak, is still quite a challenge. And yeah, I was thinking, how can that be done? And so thank you to Edmund, just describing how somebody else has done it. I'm guessing he's probably doing something quite similar. But yeah, I would wish him all the best, because this is that'll be quite a challenge, but I guess quite rewarding if he pulls it off.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one, Chris. No problems at all. Well, our next news story, Chris would normally be getting ready to take me aside and make sure I'm well behaved and politically correct and all the other things on this. However, and I mean this nicely, our hobby is predominantly white old men. I'm not being racist on this, white old men. When you see schoolgirls and Indian schoolgirls that have tried to launch a satellite into space, I think that's a damn good thing they've tried to do. Ed, do you want to go first on this one?
This story is one that was covered on AR Newsline a couple of weeks ago when it was all being prepared. And then, unfortunately, in the latest edition, we've had to carry this same story, which is that, unfortunately, the satellites that these young Indian ladies designed and built on board what was actually the first time the launch vehicle had been used by the Indian Space Company as part of the Space Kids India project. The deployment didn't work right, and the satellites went into the wrong orbit, and they are a write-off. So I'll leave it to Caryn to comment on how the young ladies probably feel about this. It's obviously a disappointment, but yeah, that's basically the story. So I'll pass it back to you, Martin, and let's go. Caryn's been in touch with some of these people, so I suggest you get her comments.
Yeah, no problems, Ed. No problems at all. Well, I pass it to you first to just keep it flowing a little bit. But yeah, Caryn raised this one with us. Caryn, would you like to go next on this one? Because I think it is interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. A lesson in science, a lesson in radio, was not supposed to become a lesson in how to deal with crushing disappointment, particularly because for all their good efforts, what failed was really something outside the realm of the students' good work. They did everything they were supposed to do, and my understanding is what caused the improper orbit, the elliptical orbit instead of the round orbit, was the failure of a sensor on the launcher itself. So that's not something the girls did or could have impacted in any way. It's just something that went wrong on this new experimental space vehicle making its maiden voyage. A disappointment really for everyone. I'm sure the Indian Space Agency was quite upset too. But when you're a kid, when you're a school kid and you've got something high profile like this, and let's face it, as you say, Martin, if you're not a somewhat more mature male and you are non-traditional participant in the process of amateur radio and science, you really want your moment in the sun. You really want to shine, and this really did not happen for these kids. On the other hand, what is our hobby if not opportunity for learning experiences? And that's in every sense of the words. So they'll have to just tough it out and try again. I'm sure Space Kids India must have at least, if not something in the curriculum, some words of encouragement for the kids. Everything is experimental these days, and you just have to go forward and try again. I look forward to being able to run a story about these youngsters succeeding next time. In essence, they did succeed already. They created the satellite. The failure, if you want to call it that was a mechanical failure on the part of the sensor. This was a launch and deployment that was supposed to be a celebration of India's 75 years of independence. So on top of that, it was very, very public and very, very high profile. Nonetheless, everybody will regroup, and I just know everybody will try again. We look forward to covering that, and hopefully next time there'll be a happy ending, and there will be some amateur radio contacts on the successor to this little satellite. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, you put it very well, Caryn. It's one of life's lessons in life that not everything goes the way you plan. Some things are out of your control and you have no control over it. But the knowledge these young ladies will have gained, hopefully they will take on board that it wasn't their fault. It was just a failure. It is cutting edge technology, and hopefully they'll build another one and get that into space. So that's what I hope for them. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, same as Caryn says, it's a terrible shame this wasn't successful, but not only did it end up in an elliptical orbit, but the perigee was only a couple of tens of miles above the Earth, so it wasn't viable, unfortunately. So it's a great shame, but I just hope that the energy that comes from their disappointment and their frustration and their upset, I guess, at this will spur them on to have another go, and the next one hopefully will be successful. With something as cutting edge as this, there are always ways that it can go wrong, but yeah, I do feel terribly sorry for them, and I just hope it won't put them off altogether.
Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. I know what you mean. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, obviously it's a real shame that this went wrong. Sounds like it wasn't actually their fault. It was a problem with the launch and the system that was used to get it up into space and the deployment. So, but I just hope they get another go. I mean, I always find doing something once takes a long time. Doing it the second time is often much quicker as you've learned from the first time. So I'm wondering if they could actually get a chance to actually give us another try, and it'd be great if they persisted and actually did manage to get maybe Mark II, maybe even an improved satellite up into orbit to be able to operate us. So that will be good. But no, not much else to say on this one. I think everyone else has pretty much covered it.
Yeah, well, you're dead right. The second time you do anything, or the second, third time, when you mass produce, it gets quicker. I'm not saying they're going to build hundreds of these, but I would guess that as they build the next one, they will have learnt a lot from the first one. And there may be some modifications they wish to have done on the first one that they'll be able to put into the second one to improve it even more. So that'll be good. Moving to our last news story, the Nrao program to educate engineering generation of scientists using amateur radio. That was a bit of a mouthful, wasn't it? Caryn, you put this one in. What do you think on this one?
I think this is a great door opener, once again, for non-traditional members of the radio community. This is for people of color. This is for members of the gay, lesbian, transgender community, people who traditionally are not given access or just don't feel welcome in our hobby and have not really participated in great numbers. Something like this grant really exposes members of this community to all the possibilities that I guess those of us who've felt, we could just walk right in, study, get our license, and get on the air, never really gave it a second thought what a privilege it is. This is a grant that will fund the National Radio Astronomy Observatory program, giving members of these communities a chance to do hands-on activities, to learn about astronomy, radio astronomy. They can study for and get not just their technician class, but their general class license to get on the air, which of course will be very, very helpful for them. They will be part of a very detailed curriculum, learning more about the science, learning about the electromagnetic spectrum, which is huge, and how many people really think about that. I know there are an awful lot of folks who think, when they think of radio, one person in a class that I'm teaching, unrelated to amateur radio, it's an editing class, but the person was editing something having to do with broadcasting and used the word airways, AIRWAYS, and I said, no, it's air waves, and I explained why it is waves and not waves, because of the electromagnetic spectrum and the radio waves. And so you can see that in the general population, people may not even be aware of what the basic things of the electromagnetic spectrum are, that it is airwaves. This is a really forward-thinking action from the good folks at Amateur Radio Digital Communications. They're really jumping in and advocating for an expansion of our community of amateur radio to be inclusive. And I say, why not?
And I agree with you on this one, Caryn. Totally agree with you. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think this is a great idea. I think everyone should be, I think everyone should get a chance or be aware of or be promoted to the hobby that we are involved with and the technical things that surround us. So things like radio astronomy and other technologies that, an amateur radio hobby could progress into. Looking at this news article, it talks about getting them in with hands-on activities around astronomy, particularly radio astronomy, support them in attaining their technician and general class licenses, and also to develop a curriculum that can be used through their, what's known as their, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, it's Supernova, but it's got a K in it, so maybe it's Super Canova, which is their online learning platform. So they're looking to make this scalable so people can actually get involved in the future, I think, through an online learning solution. So they've got some quite good goals here. So it's a 2-year program. And I applaud what they're doing, and it's great that the ARDC once again are able to provide some funding to assist with this sort of thing. So no, I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is that if the people that are teaching this and educating the youngsters are enthusiastic, that's going to create a really, really good course, and some really good people come out the far end on this one, I would suggest. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, there's interesting links back from this story to one of the earlier stories about the radio telescope, in so much as the National Radio Astronomy Observatory actually has the Carl G. Jansky Very Large Array. So that was the gentleman that didn't employ the radio amateur back in 1937, and he went off and homebrewed his own radio telescope. So interesting link back there. But the way this story starts and the key point behind this, it's also part of the general drive to get more people into the technical fields, in this case astronomy, radio, etc. And again, it's another example of where the ARDC, by being able to provide funding, has enabled a course to go ahead that actually includes amateur radio as part of one of the steps of the course, and that just shows the value of amateur radio that we all know, but now it's going to be spread out into a wider community in the radio astronomy community, and obviously the universities and the government and everybody else hearing about this kind of thing going on can only do good for the look of amateur radio, and also to underline that amateur radio is still linked to advanced technologies and still relevant. And I think that's a very good thing that will come out of all of this. Yes, we'll get some good technicians coming out of it, some good scientists coming out of it, but at the same time, we're going to get some good publicity for amateur radio through this as well, I think. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I think you're dead right on that, Ed. And when you said, at one point in time, I thought you were going to say, and that'll prove that amateur radio is alive and kicking. But yeah, let's say good news on that one. Right, that concludes our news stories. Let's find out what the guys have been up to since we last had a chat. Ladies first, Caryn, off you go. What have you been up to since we last chatted?
Okay, I have some fun stuff and some frustrating stuff, but it's all good, right? Okay, the fun stuff, we'll start with that. Now, through Sunday, actually it's been going on for a couple of days, I'm part of a activation of a special event called the World's Largest Teapot. We are activating Whiskey Zero Tango or Whiskey Zero Teapot right up through the regions. My region is Kilo to Teapot because the whiskey was not, the whiskey literally was not available. So I'm having fun doing that. I love special events. And since I'm a 100-watt station, you have to realize it's more fun being on the receiving end of the pileup, because we know what happens to those of us without a linear amp most of the time. So it's just been a lot of fun. And more important than that, and I cannot stress this enough, it is so fabulous being part of a team of hams around the country who are doing this. Yeah, it's a cute little roadside attraction. It is the world's largest teapot. It's in West Virginia. It's a roadside attraction, very local thing, but we're all doing our part to celebrate with the folks in West Virginia. What we had hoped and didn't happen. So if anybody is listening for next year, my goodness, world's largest teapot really calls for an operator from the UK. And we were really kind of hoping this year we could make it an international event. So if anybody's listening or anybody here on the team wants to have some fun next year, I can put you in touch with the organizers of that. So that's on the fun. Well, it's all fun. I was going to say that's on the amusing side. On the more serious side, my journey into the land of portable continues. I am working with the wonderful Yaesu FT891 and a buddy pole. I'm working from the back garden right now to perfect, or at least not perfect, but nearly perfect on my SWR before I take the show on the road. We're going for 20, 30, and 40 meter portable operation at 50 or 60 watts. Now, to a lot of folks, this is like, hey, a no-brainer, no problem, but you have to understand I'm a bit challenged in this department, and the buddy pole does have to be finessed somewhat to get a good SWR. So we're working on that. I'm happy to say we're not just working on that. We made progress 2 weeks ago. We didn't go out this week because temperatures were 35 Celsius, which is way too high for me. Remember, I'm in New York. I do not handle the heat. So I'm looking forward with the cooler temps to getting back out there and then maybe hitting the parks and really taking the show on the road. So that's it for me, Martin. Back to you.
Well, Caryn, it sounds like you've been having fun, and that's the most important thing, you know. All right, you might spend time fiddling with a buddy pole, but at the end of the day, as long as you're enjoying it, no harm done. I'm sure you'll get the contacts you want. Just because somebody else has done it doesn't mean to say it shouldn't be interesting to you. I remember when I first came in the hobby, and I'm going to be on my high horse on this one, there used to be a lot of the old boys, and they used to, you know, one of the new members of the club, one of the new licensees would come in and go, I just worked Australia, or I just worked the States. And the old boys would sit there and go, yeah, I read it, I've got a T-shirt, oh yeah, anybody can do that, blah, blah, blah. And they totally put them down. And the first time you do something, and you can do it, is very, very important. Not just for you, Caryn, but for everybody. So don't let anybody put you off. You get the enjoyment from it. And that's me off my high horse. Right. Edmund, you like doing special event stations. I reckon Caryn might hijack you for this.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear about what Caryn's up to, because I think I'm right in saying, am I, Caryn, that special event stations in the United States don't seem to be as popular as, say, in Europe and in the UK in particular?
They are gaining some traction. They are. I think what happened is when 13 colonies kind of set the bar pretty high. Then we had the 12 Days of Christmas. And then for the American TV show Last Man Standing, it solidified a community of hams as a team. But there are special events that pop up here and there. So it is not, I don't see it as much in the States, but yep, it's starting to grow. And I'm real happy about that because I'm happy to be a part of it.
Oh, wonderful. Well done for doing it. And would this be a really bad time to confess that I can't stand tea and I only drink coffee?
Oops. I'm drinking tea right now, so I'll drink for the both of us.
If it was the world's largest coffee pot, then I might be able to be persuaded. What have I been up to? Well, on the very final day of July, I travelled to Willesborough Windmill in the east of Kent to attend the Grand Field Day, and spent a nice few hours in the company of Martin and Carol. And one of the organisers tells me that the event is already in the calendar for 2023. So if you are anywhere vaguely local to Willesborough Windmill, very easy to get to, just off the M20 motorway, then put a date in your diary for the final Sunday in July 2023. It's not a rally. It's first and foremost a social event with people selling things out of their cars on the side. So if you visualise it as a traditional radio rally, then I think you might be disappointed. But if you see it first and foremost as a social event, getting a chance to chat to people face to face who maybe you've only ever heard up till now on the air before, then it's a great event. And we were very lucky with the weather once again, weren't we, Martin?
We certainly was, Edmund. We certainly was. And I'm going to disagree with you slightly about the rally such in a minute, because there was things going on. But don't worry, that was what you saw. So carry on.
Yeah, there were people selling things there out of the boots of their car. But if you visualise a rally like, say, a miniature version of the National Hamfest with rows and rows of people selling out of doors, then it wasn't on that scale. But then the advantage of that was that, unlike at certain rallies, you could actually get close to the tables to see what people were selling. There weren't crowds and crowds of people getting in the way of your eye line. And there's also plenty of opportunity for social distancing outdoors. So if somebody were worried about coronavirus, then it would be very easy to do the 2 metre social distancing. So I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was the first time I attended, but I can recommend it very much, and hopefully we'll be back there on the final Sunday in 2023. In other news, I'm getting ready for the International Lighthouse and Lightship weekend, which takes place the weekend after this podcast is released. I won't say too much because I've recorded a feature on this event, which is my favourite amateur radio event of all, bar none. I'll mention a couple of things that maybe I should have mentioned in the actual feature itself. Number one, if you're doing any special event station, remember to take into account the rules that were introduced recently about RF exposure, and fill in your calculator to make sure that you're compliant. Number two, if you have the possibility of doing a VHF station as well as an HF one, then please consider it. That holds true of all special event stations, not just lighthouses, because whilst it is nice to work the DX, there will be a number of people locally who will want to talk to you as well, and in some ways your activation will probably mean more to them than it will to somebody round the other side of the world, because as nice as the DX is, if you're having a contact with somebody local on 2 metres, there stands a reasonable chance that they could be familiar with the location where you're operating from, or possibly have even visited it in person in the past. So if you're doing a special event station at the weekend, somebody who might want to talk to you locally is far more likely to have a handy talkie in their shirt pocket than to have an HF rig. So as nice as long distance HF contacts are, please don't forget the 2 metre local contacts as well. And last but not least, following a club meeting last night, it does look like my local club, the Worthing District Amateur Radio Club, is going to be able to activate Shoreham Lighthouse, which is fantastic news, because even if the club put in the worst performance that they have ever done in all the years that they've been activating Shoreham Lighthouse, and the first time was 1999. Even if they had a disastrous activation from start to finish, it would still far outshine anything that I was capable of doing on my own, sitting in my car with a leisure battery. So this is really good news. I'm really looking forward to it, and 40 metres SSB is usually the band and mode of choice, so have a listen out for Golf Bravo 8 Sierra Lima, GB8 Shoreham Lighthouse. And at the time of recording this, and we're recording this on the 10th of August, the number of official registrations on the illw.net website is getting close to 350, which is really good news. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, you're going to have fun, I can tell. We joined you a couple of years ago when you were working on your own. Chris Martin and I turned up one afternoon and said hi while you were operating. So, yeah. Ed, what have you been up to over there in Germany?
Oh, this is a nice follow-on to Edmund's piece, because what I've been doing over the last month is working with Kevin, VK2 Charlie Echo, who is the organiser behind ILLW, provided him with the 2022 versions of the flyers in English, Spanish and German. I also provided German and Spanish versions of the 25th year ILLW certificate to go with Kevin's English version. This is the 25th year of ILLW, so it's something special. And all activators, all people who activate the lighthouses will be able to download a certificate for them to keep. So that's something we're organised. Yeah, and just a quick plug in here for the ILLW. It does have costs. It's not sponsored by anybody. It's not commercially sponsored. It doesn't get money from somebody else. It only gets it from donations. So if any of the listeners want to actually give a dollar or two, please go to illw.net, and there's a donation button there for you to give whatever you think it's worth, and keep the show going. Link to that on my side. I've been getting everything ready for my 2 Lighthouse 2-day single op activation of the oldest lighthouse in Germany, which was built in 1230, called Mangturm, and also the new lighthouse, built in 1856, on the West Pier of Lindau Island in Lake Constance. I've been doing things like putting the tent I'll have with me up in the garden today so I can remember how to put it up. And I'm hoping for some impressive lighthouse-to-lighthouse contacts, whether they are within the country or within the 5 countries that you can see from, 4 countries you can see from the park where I am, or whether they're further afield. It's all going to be good. The other thing I've been working on is actually been making some good progress on some new smartphone apps, but that's going to remain a secret until they're actually released. But just to say, there are a couple of very interesting apps that are portable operators will love to have. Point out, I haven't written these apps. I'm only doing the beta testing, and therefore I have no right to announce what they are at this point until they're at a stage where they are actually released to the public. And yeah, apart from that, just general radio, working into DX locations from home and also from portable. Worked into Australia probably 5 times since the last show. That does sound to be boasting, but there's a certain amount, coming back on what Martin says, personal achievements are very important, but you also have to have confidence. Don't ever back off if somebody says, oh, you won't be able to do that with a propagation like it is at the moment. Because 9 times out of 10, you can do that if you get the time right. So do a little bit of research, get the long path or the short path or what's appropriate for the area where you want to try and get into, and give it a go. Whether portable or home station, If you don't give it a go, you'll never know. So just go in there with the confidence that you can achieve long-distance contacts, or you can get that kit built, and you'll be surprised how often you get a positive response. If something goes wrong, you learn by your mistakes. So all in all, I think it's one of those months where I've had more positives than negatives, and I hope that everybody else is doing well. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, sounds good, Ed. And Ed, you lucky devil, doing the Lindell Island on Lake Constance. That is a beautiful place. If you're doing that one on the Sunday, the island will have a hell of a lot of people on there, so be prepared for a lot of people just wander by and find out what you're up to. But yeah, Caryn and I walked around the island about 3 times when we were on it. It's absolutely beautiful. That's what I'll say, yeah. I can't.
Yeah, I'll concur with that. I was down there yesterday checking everything out to make sure I still have access where I want to go to. I do have, and I'm actually there both days, Saturday and Sunday. So if anybody here has DD5LP portable on the 20th and the 21st of this month, it will be from the park between the 2 lighthouses in Lindau.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting that location, Ed, and lovely part of the world, that is. Right, Chris, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, I wasn't all that long ago, so I've not done an awful lot, to be honest. Things I'm getting up to, so we've got SSB Field Day coming up in a few weeks, early September, and as usual, we're starting to plan for that. So we've got a call tomorrow night with members of the club to start to organise that. We operate from a field as an airfield, not where the planes land, kind of outside of the airside area, but we operate, as you know, Martin, we've done it a few times there. So just starting to plan for that. And there's a fair few things involved in that, but I'm sure we'll get that sorted and get everyone ready to go with that one. Interesting listening to Caryn earlier about the largest teapot, I think it was, wasn't it? Special event station. It reminds me of when I was a child. So I'm from the north of England, even though I now live in the south of England. And there is the Denbydale Pie, which I know there's the Denbydale Radio Society, which are actually based at the Pie Hall. And basically, I think it's the world's largest meat and potato pie they produce. They've done it 12 times over the last couple hundred years. So that was quite interesting. I'm pretty sure they will do a special event station when that happens. It's quite a big event. I think the last one was back in 2000, and I think it was something like 12 tons, this pie. So it's not a small thing. It's quite a significant thing. So just reminding that, so when we talked about the teapot there, so yeah, that was interesting. And Edmund, yes, the Lighthouse on the air. I do remember when, I think it was maybe last time before, we popped in to see, didn't we, operating from there. So you never know, you might get some visitors to see you again when you're operating that Lighthouse. I think it's in Shoreham, isn't it? But I'm sure we'll listen to that on the feature next. So I'm sure we'll be telling us all about it. But no, nothing really else from me, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but yeah, so we're all having fun, Chris, and I know you're doing a fair bit as well. Right, well, I haven't done that much, so mine's going to be quite quick, unfortunately. The usual 4 meters, 2 meters and 70 SEMs operating. I've done a bit of shortwave listening, probably more listening and transmitting on HF, just tuning up and down the bands, having a look. And yeah, I've sat in the shack doing other things but listening, so that's been good fun. Yeah, I did go to the grand field day with Edmund, and I actually had the ICQ podcast digital system set up in a field next to the windmill, and I had people coming by and we were demonstrating it, and got some quite interesting results. Had a man and woman that had just passed their foundation license holders, so they just passed their first test, and they didn't understand anything much about digital. And I said, well, look, I can explain it, but have a go. And I think I gave the lady D-Star and the gentleman had Fusion, and they had a conversation across the park. The signal was going far further than that by the time it was being decoded and transcoded. But They had a great time. They tried it out and other people had a go. The talk group has now increased by one country. We have 46 countries. Russia joined the countries for the new set. And the last thing I'm going to say is I've been asked by a number of the listeners on the digital talk group, when are we going to do another 12-hour session? So for my sins, I am planning to do a 12-hour activation of the digital group system between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. GMT. So in the UK, it'll be between 8 and 8, but in GMT, it'll be between 7 and 7. And I'm planning to be on that whole 12 hours, not just so people can talk to me, because hopefully, as happened last time, a number of other amateurs will talk amongst themselves. Great. That's what it's there for. So, one to put in your diary, 17th of September, UTC 7 till 1900 UTC, or local 8 to 2000 local time in the UK. So that's what I'm up to. Doing lots of other bits and pieces, but just generally keeping out of trouble. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today. I think it's been quite a good one. I think we've really cracked a few of these news stories. So I'd like to thank Caryn KD2GUT for joining me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Always a pleasure to be part of the team here, Martin. Wishing everyone a good week ahead.
Thank you, Caryn. I'd like to thank Edmund for joining us, M0MNG.
Many thanks for having me on, Martin. Cheers.
Cheers, mate. I'd also like to thank Ed, DD5LP.
Yep, thanks a lot. CQ Lighthouse.
As you do, Ed, as you do. And I'd also like to thank Chris, M0TCH, for joining us tonight at short notice.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks for the invite, and thanks to everybody else. It was the usual fun.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, all that's left for me to do now is say 73s to you guys. So 73s, and we'll continue with the podcast. 73, guys.
73.
73.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief from me, Colin M6BLY. We start with news here that the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo is back for its autumn edition in 2022. As always, this online event will include speakers and presentations, an interactive video lounge, and QSOs, and an opportunity to catch up with your friends from around the world in virtual meeting hubs, etc. The group continue to invest in the Kumo Space Lounges, which is a fantastic addition, which was first launched in the March edition of the Ham Expo, and they're building on that for the September one from there. There's also a poster gallery that includes a product showcase for vendors from around the world, and saying it's also supported by the vSphere's technology based there. So there's apps available for Apple and Android, as well as obviously using your usual, as say PC, etc., to work away from there. So I would say this evolving virtual event, which has taken place since August 2020, to fill the gap from the pandemic, is fully available for you from there. And you can find out more information by visiting the QSO Today Ham Expo on the internet there, and find out more information about the event. In Australia, there's a Remembrance Day contest. This is a event where amateurs, as they commemorate the efforts of all veterans from World War II. It's a friendly participation to help operating skills of the participants improve. It's held on the weekend closest to the 15th of August, which will make it held this weekend as we release here. There is some awards and trophies, etc., but say predominantly it's a friendly contest, and the aim is for all VK area call signs to be on the air and work away from there. Modes allowed are phone, CW and RTTY, as per the era being remembered. The VKCL is the login software of choice that will allow HF and VHF UHF contacts to be logged from there. So we'll pop a link to this on the ICQ podcast webpage if you'd like to take part, just as we release this episode of the show. Now, special event call sign AP75 PAK, that's Alpha Papa 75 Papa Alpha Kilo, is on the air to celebrate 75 years of the independence of the state of Pakistan. And the Pakistan Amateur Radio Society are operating this special event call sign and other special event stations with the prefix AP75 will be heard as well. Across all bands, including satellites, HF and 6 meters, they're suggesting. And look at that. There is an award going to be given for any combination of 5 QSLs with AP75 stations. So again, we'll put a link to this on icqpodcast.com so you can check that out and maybe apply for your award. Right, now we're going to head over to our features episode where our colleague Ed Mike 0 Mike November Golf will be talking about this International Lighthouse and Lightships weekend coming up for this year 2022. So as always, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
In August 2009, I was studying for my foundation licence, and the Worthing Amateur Radio Club invited me to attend Shoreham Lighthouse for the International Lighthouse and Lightship weekend. This was the first amateur radio event that I had ever experienced, and perhaps for that reason it remains my favourite amateur radio event of all to this day. I have 2 really strong memories of that weekend. Number 1 was how many German lighthouses there were on the air. Now, I think of Germany mainly as a landlocked country, but it's easy to forget that there are many miles of coastline in the north, and Germany, even to this day, is very active in the International Lighthouse and Lightship weekend. My other abiding memory is one of the Worthing Club members getting rather frustrated that there was a group of German lighthouses on 40 metres, all talking to each other in German but not answering our calls, and somebody had told this chap that I could speak German after a fashion, but because I didn't hold a licence in my own right at that moment, I was not allowed under the rules, so I was told to pass a greetings message because Germany was not one of the countries that would accept such a thing. So a quick tip there, if you're running a pile up and you have many stations calling you in your own language, please don't overlook working stations that are calling you from countries where they speak a different language to you, and concentrate purely on working people who do speak the same language as you, German in this example. So wind forward to 2022, and this year is the silver anniversary of the International Lighthouse and Lightship weekend in its current form. It had its origins prior to that, and the event started in Scotland in the early 1990s. The official website does contain quite comprehensive details about the history of the event, so I'm not going to repeat that here, but it's well worth looking at www.illw.net for more details. The event takes place almost always on the third full weekend in August, so this year that places it on Saturday the 20th and Sunday the 21st of August. It runs from 0000 UTC on the Saturday until 2359 UTC on the Sunday evening. There are no specified times when lighthouses are to go on the air. The only request is that groups or individuals activating lighthouses be as active as they can. The ILLW is not a contest, which is probably one of the reasons I like it so much. There are no prizes or leaderboards or certificates either for putting a lighthouse on the air or for being a chaser at home. And because it's not a contest, there are no restrictions on the bands or modes that you can use. The only possible restriction is what your licence allows. In the UK, 40 metres and 20 metres do seem to be predominantly the bands of choice. 80 metres tends to be used not quite so much because in the Northern Hemisphere we are well into summertime, and because a lot of the activity tends to be during the day rather than overnight, 80 metres does tend not to be used quite so much. Although having said that, if you're around early in the morning or late in the evening, and if you can put an antenna up that will go on 80 metres, then it may well be worth putting a few calls out on that band. I would recommend not using 60 metres, 5 megahertz too much, simply because in the UK, for example, if somebody who would like to work you happens to be a foundation or an intermediate licence holder, then they are not legally allowed to transmit on that band, so you're effectively excluding or restricting your audience. A major purpose of the Lighthouse weekend is to demonstrate amateur radio to passing members of the public and visitors to the Lighthouse. So for that reason, it is a requirement that your station should be at or adjacent to the lighthouse you are representing. Adjacent means next to or as close as possible. Now, in the wake of COVID, Ofcom in the UK did relax the special event station conditions to a quite a large extent. So some people were actually on the air from their home in support of a particular event when their home could be many miles away from where the event was taking place. Obviously nobody can stop you if you want to do that, but doing such a thing would not be in the spirit of the International Lighthouse and Lightship weekend. The other question that comes up sometimes is, what is a lighthouse? Now, there is no hard and fast definition of this, but if you look on the official website, you will see some photographs of rejected entries that people have tried to claim are lighthouses. And if you look at the photos, I think you'll be able to see why many of them have been rejected. If you could reasonably expect to show a photograph of the lighthouse to a right-thinking, reasonable member of the public, and that person straight away would say, well, it's a lighthouse, isn't it? Obviously, Gov, then chances are you'll be okay. And last but not least, modes. All modes are okay, which includes FM repeaters, satellites. The official website discourages the use of FT8, and I'm not going to try to outline the rationale here, not least because I don't want to open a can of worms on the merits or otherwise of FT8, but if you're interested in reading that, then please do have a look at the official website. But as the webmaster points out, at the end of the day, it's only a recommendation, and as long as you are operating within your license, then in reality you can do what you like. Now, a few hints and tips if this has whetted your appetite for activating a lighthouse. First of all, make sure, if you've never been to the particular lighthouse before, that nobody else, either individual or club, has plans of going down there and doing the same thing. If you look on the website, there is a list of entrants going back to 1998, I think it is. So hopefully that will help avoid any clashes. Assuming it is available, then it's worth doing a trial run. You may find that the location doesn't have as many places where you can put an HF antenna up as you may have imagined. You might find it's a lot more electrically noisy than you were expecting as well. You might have a vision of a lighthouse sitting on its own miles from anywhere on a cliff top, and yes, certainly there are some that fit that description, but some of them can be very close to potential sources of noise, for example close to a main road or to private housing, and you may find that the noise level there is a lot higher than you were expecting, and that applies to people chasing after lighthouses. If you're calling a lighthouse and they're a good strong signal to you and you can't hear a pile-up, although of course the fact you can't hear a pile-up doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't one, then it may be that they're simply not hearing you because of a high noise level locally, rather than them deliberately ignoring you, which hopefully is something that would never happen. If you are considering putting up a tent or a gazebo or something similar, then make sure that you have the means to secure it and to tie it down. Even if the weather forecast is for a lovely weekend and not a breath of wind, and even if that comes to pass, if you are right next to the water, you can still get breezes come up, particularly around midday and high tides, that could blow your gazebo around a lot more than you were expecting. And if you've got wind breaks or flags to advertise your club, make sure that they don't unscrew themselves. We've had a few incidences at Shoreham Lighthouse in years gone by where we had a couple of wind breaks that were screwed into those plastic bases that you can fill with water and that people normally use to screw an umbrella into. And we found that if the wind was blowing from a particular angle, these windbreaks would catch the wind and unscrew themselves, and we would be forever screwing them back in, which was a bit of a distraction that we could have done without. Think about where you're going to get electricity from. If you are going to make a weekend of it, then it's worth asking the question if the lighthouse itself or a nearby building, the Shoreham Rowing Club in the example, in the case of Shoreham Lighthouse, can provide mains electricity. It's a real bonus if they can. Obviously, if somebody gives you mains electricity, then at the very least offer them a respectable amount of money for that facility. And especially as the price of everything is going up these days, make sure that it is a respectable amount of money. But bear in mind also that if you are on the end of a long extension lead, then that also potentially can pick up interference. If you're chasing after lighthouses, then keep an ear, or an eye I should say, on the cluster. There is a specific lighthouse cluster which I presume will be up and running again in 2022, and there's a link to that on the official ILLW website. If you are spotting a lighthouse, I would suggest that you don't put /Lima Hotel after the lighthouse's call sign, even if the lighthouse itself uses that suffix, simply because the cluster will misinterpret Lima Hotel as meaning that the lighthouse is in Norway. So whichever country you're in reality, if you look on the cluster, you'll get a little Norwegian flag appear for any lighthouses that have been spotted with the call sign /LH. And when the event is all over, if you've activated a lighthouse, then please do consider sending in a report and some photographs to the official website. The webmaster, Kevin, publishes them all every year, and if you make a YouTube video, send him the hyperlink and he will happily publicise that. I'm really hoping for a good turnout in 2022 for the 25th anniversary of the Lighthouse Weekend in its current form. The event did take a bit of a battering in 2020 and 21 due to coronavirus. In the years leading up to that, it was quite typical to get somewhere between 450 and 550 registrations worldwide. At the moment, I'm recording this on the 1st of August 2022, the registrations are at roughly 275, but in 2020 and 21 they were a lot lower than that for completely understandable reasons. But it would be really good to help support this event, so please do consider listening around. Mainly on SSB, mainly on 40 and 20 metres, but as mentioned, all bands and all modes are potentially usable by lighthouse stations. And if you want to get yourself in the mood, then listen on the Friday evening, because many lighthouses come on the air on Friday evening to test their antenna and all their equipment. And annoyingly, it's not at all unusual for you to hear or work your best DX of the whole weekend on the Friday evening, which officially falls outside of the event's operating times. A couple of years back, Shoreham Lighthouse worked a lighthouse in South Africa on 40 metres, I think it was. A few years prior to that, I worked or heard, can't remember, a lighthouse in Algeria, also on 40 metres. But although it doesn't matter in the sense that it's not a contest with a strict starting and finishing time, if you do work a rare lighthouse on the Friday evening, it can be a bit of a bummer, really, because, as I say, officially, it's outside of the event. I plan to be on the air either solo or with the club. There's a bit of a question mark because there is a rumour that the car park may be unavailable, undergoing development at some point during August. And if that does turn out to be the case, then we'll be scuppered because of the at or adjacent to rule. Otherwise, please do listen out for Golf Bravo 8 Sierra Lima, if it's the Worthing Club doing it, or Golf Bravo 2 India Sierra Lima, if it's yours truly doing a solo effort. One final request: if you know that you will definitely be activating a lighthouse and you don't have any question marks hanging over it like I do, and you know what the call sign is going to be, then please do register on the official website and do it sooner rather than later. There are always last minute registrations and they don't necessarily go on the official list in time if you leave registering your lighthouse to the very last minute. And whilst registering is not compulsory, it does help other people out there, chasers and fellow activators alike, have some idea of who is on the air and from where. That website, once again, www.illw.net. That is run by a gentleman called Kevin in Australia, who for many years, if not decades, has been funding the upkeep of that website out of his own pocket, very kindly. So if you use the website and find value in it, and if financially you are in a position to do so, bearing in mind how hard times are for everybody at the moment, then please do consider sending Kevin a few coins, electronically, of course, to help towards the upkeep of the website. I know that he would appreciate it very much. 7-3, and good luck to you all from Mike 0, Mike November Golf. Bye-bye for now.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Well, many thanks there to our friend and colleague Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, there for his feature on the International Lighthouse and Lightships weekend. So it's just coming up in a few days' time. Now, a couple of interesting bits of feedback from yourselves, the listeners, and we always appreciate you getting in touch. First one comes from Chuck, VK2 Sierra Sierra. He says, thanks for a recent podcast. Look forward to each episode. In a recent podcast, you mentioned a hot air balloon ride. My wife and I had a balloon ride over the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. The pilot was a qualified and licensed operator, and he told me that he was trained in Australia. On return to Australia, he mentioned this guy to a friend of his, Alan, VK2 Alpha Lima November, who runs the hot air balloon operation in Orange in central North South Wales. And New South Wales, not North South Wales, my apologies. And sure enough, he had trained this guy. Small world or what? Well, isn't that a very apt of amateur radio there, Dad? As I say, it proves how much of a small world our hobby is. That you bump into one person, and before you know it, they know loads of other people you know as well.
Certainly, yes, mate. And as I say, when I wrote back to Chuck, I said I'm glad he brought back memories of his hot air balloon flight, because I thoroughly enjoyed mine. And it was nice to know that him and his wife had a great time. And I also mentioned that us amateurs seem to come across people we know or live fairly close to us wherever we go. And it's probably because we're the ones who talk to people. But hey, that's all part of our hobby.
Yeah, do you remember that amateur we met in Friedrichshafen and used to live just north of Dublin? And he was a hot air balloon flyer. I think he ran a hot air balloon amateur radio club member. Unfortunately, he's a silent key now. But as very hospitable, always had lots of people around his stand in Friedrichshafen. Might have something to do with the large amounts of Jameson whiskey he used to bring over to Friedrichshafen and give away little tipples to people constantly of his welcome from Ireland, which proves how much of a social bunch we really are. So, as I say, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I do apologise, but as I say, you do pop into my mind every so often, as I say.
Yeah, he said to me, I'm only going to give you the interview, Martin, if you have a whiskey with me. And at 10 o'clock in the morning.
It's noon somewhere in the world. It's always noon somewhere in the world. Just remember that, So there you go.
Yeah. I got the interview.
Exactly. So Phil, VK6 Alpha Delta Foxtrot drops a little line to remind us that VK6 Charlie Lima Lima, that's the Cape Lewin Lighthouse, will be on the air for the International Lightship and Lighthouse and Lightship weekend, and have D-Star running as he did last year. And he'll be using our reflector as well, our ICQ reflector XLX 948A as well to say broadcast there. So again, keep an ear out for Phil, as I say, for that weekend on XLX 948A. So Phil, thanks a lot there for using that reflector from there. So much appreciated there. So it's a good opportunity to working from there. Now that's not the only thing happening this weekend as well. It's birthday weekend, so I'm going to take this opportunity to wish you a happy birthday, Dad. As I say, it's a joint celebration. And as always, we're miles apart, and more than usual, with myself in Portugal for this episode, and yourself there in London. But I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, yourself, Colin. Happy birthday for you tomorrow. And likewise, a lot of people find it very strange that you and I have the same birthday. I think it's your mum's fault, by the way. But if there's an owl in a minute, it's because I've been clipped round the ear. No problems. Okay then, mate. Well, as I say, enjoy your birthday tomorrow. And it's another turn around the sun we've done.
True. Now, to protect you from that owl that you might be getting there, I'm going to suggest you head off, and as I say, maybe a cup of tea might be a bit too hot in this weather, so maybe a nice cool drink, and you never know, you might be able to have a little rummage in the freezer and find a nice chocolate-based ice cream, maybe, rather than the standard chocolate biscuit, because I know you're having a bit of a heat wave there in London, as I say, so maybe something to cool down and refresh under the umbrella in the garden.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what I can find you, Mum. Something warm. I know she's got some bars in the freezer that she rather likes because she's been putting these like mini chocky bars in there, and they're solid. One quick thing though, before I do go and make your mum a cup of tea, I did mention it, and I should have spoke to you before, but you're in Portugal at the moment. 17th of September. Put it in your diary, guys. If you didn't listen to the early part of what we've been up to, put it in your diary. 17th of September, between 0700 UTC and 1900 UTC, we're going to do another activity day on the ICQ podcast digital project. So plenty of people. You're all welcome. Once again, 17th of September, between 7 UTC and 1900 UTC. And I know we were talking about this, Colin, but I announced it in the podcast. So there we go. I'm now going off to make your mum a nice drink and see what else I can find.
Perfect, no problems at all. Well, look, 73s all look forward to catching on the ICQ Digital Group on the 17th of September. But in the meantime, hope you enjoy this episode. And remember us at icqpodcast.com/donate. So, look, we'll bid you all 73s, as I say, and catch up again in a fortnight's time. 73s all.
Yeah, 73.